Let's listen in to more reactions from ANC leaders on Ramaphosa's maiden January 8 statement.
Well, I think this was great. As you can see, the reception from the masses was outstanding, and I believe all South Africans welcomed the speech as much as the people who were in the stadium did, especially three very important things. The fight on corruption was emphasized many times. The issue of the return of the land and the transformation of the whole economy. And lastly, the issue of unity. Those, for me, were very outstanding in the speech.
It's only the ANC that is 106 years. It means there are many who came before us. We need to take heed of their advice, and we need to also infuse new ideas from young people. And what we also have to appreciate is that we are a diverse organization. Our differences must not turn us into enemies, but they must actually expose the richness of the African National Congress.
The ANC-NEC statement as presented by the president of the ANC did manage to cover a range of the issues in the broad sense. What is critical now is all of us getting down to work to ensure that the detail is clear, but also that we implement, because the key word this time going forward is going to be implementation and implementation. What is on the table at the moment may not have 100% covered everything, but it's a solid base to begin to do work on. We're looking at the ANC in showing leadership that the alliance is going to be united, the issues that have been there will be dealt with, but what is key is the socio-economic resolutions, including the issue of the Reserve Bank, the State Bank, the mining company. These are going to be very, very critical in implementing going forward, and we are positive.
Well, I think it was a very good statement by President Cyril Ramaphosa. It covered the issues that are foremost in the minds of South Africans with regards to radical economic transformation. He referred to the issue of land restitution without compensation. He also referred to the issue of the Reserve Bank and also the financial institutions. I think what is critical now is that we need to forge unity around these issues for radical economic transformation. We must make sure that the resolutions that have been taken at our National Elective Conference are not watered down, that they are fully implemented. This is what the delegates at the National Elective Conference wanted.
Tata wethu siyathemba into yobana uza kwenza inguqu kuyo yonke into ayaziyo uba sishota ngayo imisebenzi yonke into otherwise si-happy ngaye.
Ngiyabonga kakhulu. Omunye siyambulela uRamaphosa kakhulu, siyathemba ukuba uzasiphatha kakuhle, uyazazi izikhalazo zethu, uzasenzela yonke into esifunayo. Amandla! And then when Mama, did you hear what you wanted to hear at the speech?
Siyambulela uThixo ngoba ephinde wasikhumbula iSouth Africa. Libuyile izwe lethu, libuyile ibhoko lethu. We feel unity, we feel that there is restoration. ANC, I feel like uba sikulando ka-94. Amandla!
And then lastly, when Mama, do you feel that everything went according to plan, that the speech was what you anticipated?
Oh, sibulela uThixo ngosibuyisela izwe lethu. Siyambulela notata wethu, ngiyethemba uzasiphatha kakuhle. Amandla!
As you can hear from the people that are speaking here, they're excited. They're saying that they feel like this is 94 all over again. Celebration, jubilation is here in East London. As you can see, people are already starting to dance. I think I'm going to join them. Back to you in studio.
It set the good tone for 2019. We are certain that we would get the 2/3 majority that we need to ensure the socio-economic transformation agenda that the President outlined, but also to ensure that we as a country are really propelled for greater heights.
I think what we've been waiting for the change and unity within our movement. Beautiful organization, ANC. The President have outlined what is needed is to perform and ensure that we win the 2019 more than 2/3 majority. That's what I can say for now. I'm very happy from the speech from my president.
And joining us in studio is Kim Heller, political analyst, Dr. Charles Sinkala, international political expert, and World Native Identity Foundation president, Lakite Gisho, Transform RSA deputy president. Good evening to you, and thanks so much for joining us. Obviously, you don't have a social life. Otherwise, why would you be here on a Saturday evening? It is, though, important, if you just take the interest that has been shown in the maiden speech of Cyril Ramaphosa. We'll take reactions and start with the lady in the center. Your view, the demeanor of Cyril Ramaphosa, he seems like a true brand ambassador of the ANC.
Thank you, and good to be here on this Saturday evening with such esteemed company. I think what we saw today in Ramaphosa's speech is a very eloquent articulation of the conference resolutions taken in December. And I think he spoke today with a flavor of organizational unity and quite fluently in the language of RET. However, you know, words can be deceiving. And starting on a rather negative note, perhaps from my side, what worries me a little bit is the doublespeak that I think we saw still creeping in to his speak, and this kind of populist accent. And I think that was expressed a little bit in how he articulated the position on land. In December, a very critical decision, possibly the most important decision the ANC has ever taken, was land return without compensation. But still today, we see there's almost like we have terms and conditions around this very important decision.
We'll pick up on that, okay. Kim. I'm just going to ask one of our sound technicians to fix your mic. I believe the audio is distorted. I do apologize for that. Dr. Sinkala, just on how important it is to have a unified a message and the tonality that is not misconstrued or that is not ambiguous. So if, for example, Cyril Ramaphosa says land expropriation without compensation, yet waters it down almost and says, but not at the expense of the economy, not at the expense of food security and the agricultural sector, do you think that is possibly what the ANC needs to refine in ensuring that they speak with one voice and with the necessary clarity?
Thank you for having me, and good evening to the viewers. It's a pleasure being here on a Saturday. Look, President Cyril Ramaphosa of the ANC, I have to congratulate him for winning the mammoth task. You know, it was not easy for him. If I a little bit talk about his candidature, Cyril Ramaphosa has been trying for the past couple of decades. It was rumored that he was supposed to be the deputy of the former president Nelson Mandela, but here he is. He's been fighting a new deal into the ANC, especially what has been going on, which is exactly opposite of what Nkosazana Dlamini was trying to talk about, where she said she doesn't mind not having the white monopoly companies to vote for her. Cyril Ramaphosa came victorious from that. But talking about the radical transformation and all what he's saying is just been touching all things on the top basis. The reason why is he's trying to be very careful in the way he handles the factions, the ones who are siding Jacob Zuma and the one who are siding him, and the New Deal principle. So we can't expect much of the things to be detailed now. That's how he's just trying to generalize everything. And there's a possibility that they might not go with what they're calling for Zuma to go, because they do not want to have a repeat of what happened to President Thabo Mbeki, where there was a lot of factions and divided the whole organization. What is concentrating at the moment is the unity of the organization, until such a time that he's got the capacity now to control and lead into the organization, then he can tackle all the issues.
Yeah, and he did say about unity, not just a superficial or cosmetic gesture from the ANC, that it needs to trickle down, including to what he referred to as gatekeepers and in the state. But like your view, was it, as Kim is saying, more eloquence without substance?
Yeah, thank you for having me. Look, my sense is that perhaps where I must start is that this is an NEC statement, read by the president. So, meaning that all of them have assessed, contributed to the statement, and the president has to then read the statement. But coming to the main issues,
I would say that this is more of the same, to be honest, because there are so many things that he spoke about. But for instance, when you look at the terminology that is used, when he spoke about committed to, strive to, affirm, reaffirm, you know, those type of messages are messages that we have been hearing throughout this January 8 statements. And we are made to believe that perhaps there will be radical change in this instance, but that's not what we got. What we got instead is what I've indicated, but what we need to get is really to speak about issues of implementation and speaking about time frames to say, and there's one statement that I like that was made to say the Integrity Commission will have its status and its powers within 6 months. That's what we want to hear. So that we must know that within that time frame, there will be some action. But when you talk about critical, serious issues of radical economic transformation, you know, you just talk about it, the state bank, confusion, we don't know really what it says about that, nationalization of Reserve Bank, you know, independence, this side we talk about it must be nationalized. So there are a number of things that really need to pan out.
But this is a list of the tasks that they have to complete within this year.
Yeah.
And so maybe it is early days or we a little bit unfair, but the one thing that I think came across very strongly, I mean, if you had a buck for every time he said unity, we'd all be sitting very comfortably in Buffalo City or wherever. Your view that evoking the spirit of Mandela, your John Langalbalele Dube, or Artambo, the importance of unity, and as you rightfully say, Lucky, that this has been a thread within the party since its inception in 1912. We've heard of unity in action last year, and the previous January 8 statement talking about unity in diversity. There's always been unity, so it's nothing new. What has changed in your? What is likely to change?
Well, perhaps I'm in a skeptical mood tonight, but I think if I look at the word unity, it's possibly the most abused word in the South African political dictionary at the moment. And I think we must handle it with a lot of care. So there's been a lot of political inertia. There's been a lot of political sloganeering in the last year that has characterized this country ahead of the December election. And I hope that changes. The saliva of the discourse moving forward needs to be one of activity and action. And I was saying a little bit earlier, perhaps I was cut off a little bit, was that this language of doublespeak and populism must stop, and what we need to see is the incisor of decisive action. So this year has to be declared. I don't think the year of Nelson Mandela or the year of anything else. It has to be the year of radical economic transformation, where land return is done without compensation. And I was saying a little bit earlier that what worries me today is that we're having a set of terms and conditions still around that. So I'm not sure if Ramaphosa is still trying to satisfy two audiences, white monopoly capital on the one side and then the ANC constituency on the other side. And he's going to have to straddle those needs as he propels forward.
Yeah, but as the leader of society and a diverse community that we find ourselves in, of course, he would have to get the buy-in of all the various sectors of society, including the fact of dealing with inequality without alienating anybody else. That's just the peculiar position South Africa finds itself in. So what else do you do without looking at the contribution of Nelson Mandela and former leaders of uniting the country, taking us from the old regime, apartheid, into democracy? They would have to capitalize on that going forward to 2019, Dr. Sinkala, don't you think?
Yeah, look, the top six of the ANC, they're very cautious or careful at the moment, because part of the problems in the ANC is within the ANC, where there's been Jacob Zuma's regime was crumpled with the corruption and state capture and all those type of things, which are these people that are still within the ANC, and he holds a high respect for them. So it would be careless for him to start attacking them now. That's why he's very cautious and trying to speak about the unity. You know, unity, we've heard about it before, but the last thing what ANC should do now is to start fighting each other as they look ahead of the elections in 2019 next year. When you talk about the Mandela, the Governor Mbeki, all these stalwarts who started the ANC and the principles and founding of them, you mentioned of going to King Zwelithini in KwaZulu-Natal. You mentioned of going to the King in Eastern Cape. You mentioned of that Eastern Cape holds all these elephants, the buffaloes. He termed it to himself. He was also once called a buffalo there because he was in that area where most of these O.R. Tambo and Nelson Mandela, they came from. So he's trying to overlook the tenure of Jacob Zuma for the moment, not to attack it directly, and reverse back to the principles on how the ANC started and what was the objectives, where they said they need to govern themselves, they need to control themselves, they need to recognize the people, they need to do radical transformation and all these things.
And I mean, the pragmatic approach to him, as charismatic as he is, you saw how he almost came to the defense of President Jacob Zuma when he was booed, and every time his name came up with Uhuru Kenyatta, with Cyril Ramaphosa saying, or at least chastising members, saying, look, we need to treat each other with respect. That is the kind of unifier that you need, one person that at least doesn't appear to be overtly leaning to one or the other side.
Yes, that I think it did give leadership. That was a very good thing to do because it showed that they are unified, Of course, unity is a very relative word. Perhaps we'll engage further on that because, we really have to talk about it. But what is critical also, what has been said by Doc, is the issue of the meeting of the stakeholders. To me is critical. Your labor, your business, your communities, and all of that is very critical. But I hold the view that it should not be something that we must be able to be bottled into, to say at all costs we have to ensure that we have to meet these people so that we must have this social contract. Because this thing has been going on for a very long time of meeting these people, especially business. But we know the attitude of business. It's very clear to say business has a serious problem of assisting this country in relation to its challenges. So I want to argue that as you do that of meeting with the stakeholders and all of that, you must also consider the issue of legislating what you want to achieve. Very critical. But also, you must be able to ensure that you're not far from implementing what you want to achieve and monitor that. You see, if you continue doing that, there will be progress. Rather than having to say, no, we must meet the stakeholders, they'll always come with their own conditions, as always, and you'll end up doing nothing. And we're almost 2019, and there must be something tangible that will show people that we are serious with regard to changing their lives.
But he showed a very boisterous attitude, and for me it sounded convincing, reassuring, saying that the state levers will also be utilized, giving opportunities to our people, by that majority black who've been marginalized. One would then hope that there would be policy reform. You've lamented the triple PFMA legislation that has consistently made it difficult for new entrants to enter into the tender space. And Kim, I just want to look at those kind of low-hanging fruit that are almost immediately implementable so that the ANC can be seen to making material change to people's lives.
I think there were a lot of ingredients within the speech that bodes well for a winning formula. And the issue, once again, with the ANC is not necessarily a lack of policy robustness, but a lack of policy implementation. But I was encouraged to hear talk about rural development, about making rural centres economically viable, and the kingdoms of economic development, rather than just the receivers and shelters. But and so I think that's good. I think free education should serve as a great example of how the ANC has moved forward tangibly with the policy this year, and should be applied across other areas. I mean, I see there's quite a lot said about branch renewal. And that is good because without effective and strong branches, the ANC is not going to do well in 2019. But once again, I have to come back to the issue of land, and I'm not going to let this go because there was concern, as far as I'm concerned, that we're saying this is at the forefront of a policy, and yet the language still today was about perhaps taking land back from government and government releasing land and municipal land. And very little said about the land stolen by white people. And so I wonder why there wasn't a courage around those kind of words. Because, you know, if we evoke the spirit and the memory of Nelson Mandela, we cannot look at a singular memory and recall of him as this father of unity. He spoke very clearly about white supremacy and how white supremacy had led to black poverty. And it's that issue that has to be at the forefront.
But how best do you go about it? I hate to break your word, Kim. We'll just take a reaction very briefly.
I think what needs to happen with regard to this thing of land, we know for a fact that there are other opposition parties that are clearly wanting to assist in terms of ensuring that you change the Constitution, Section 25 to be precise, in terms of the Constitution. Now, let's leave out our political egos, you know, and say let's focus on assisting our people. Let's get the land. And correctly stated by Kim, it should not just be government land. It should be land that is fertile, land that people can stay in, and all of that land. Now, what I want to make before you cut me, what I want to say is to say, when we have that land, there are our people that have been working on those land for ages. You know, I don't agree with this thing that the condition that we have to take this land, but we must consider this thing of food production and all of those things. Our people can do that. All what they need is resources and the tools to do it. And you can get a project manager to be able to do that.
Yeah, but you know, to say this can't be done in a reckless, or to render the state in anarchy. You know, we need to do this in a pragmatic process that is thought through, that will not necessarily lead to an unstable economy, etc.
Yes, you're doing that, because obviously you can't just do it tomorrow. You have a process in which you will be able to do that, but you have the people and you have the resources that will be able to give the people who train them. You get managers that will be able to help them to manage their farms. So
that's the application. I just want to come back to the idea, the philosophy behind take the land at all costs and restore the land to the people.
You see, it's unfortunately that I've been hearing about the land expropriation without compensation, without the roadmap which has been set by the ANC government and all the stakeholders who are supporting this. It's a very serious concern because once you don't have the roadmap on how you're going to execute that, you can take the land away from the white person who got it illegally, but whom are you going to replace there? Are you going to train these people to use those lands productively? Are you going to look at the issues like these people that have been there onto those lands for generations after generations? And for you to understand agriculture, you need to pass through all those generations, which is more than 100 years. So it's a very critical issue. If it is not tabled out correctly, South Africa might end up not being downgraded like always. It's happened because it's normal to junk status, but we're going to be branded like a shithole from the Trump administration or Trump himself, because as Africans we've got a problem, of entitlement and of issues of not recognizing ourselves that this is how we have to execute this. We admire white people of what they are doing, the businesses they have built, the empires. Now we want to transform that to our ownership so that we can also be on that lucrative status. But how are we going to do it? Do we have the training? Do we have all these things? So these are serious issues where we as Africans, we must stop running away from them. A lot of Africans, I'm told, every day they die into the Mediterranean Sea to go to the almighty green card in America, running away from problems. So because we do not have a roadmap on how we're going to execute this. And I think that is
so hopefully your
important
contributions would also be considered, and hopefully the leadership will heed the call that indeed that it has to have some process or plan in place to deliver the desired results. Of course, other issues that the ANC would have to deal with is its alliance partners who use the platform to express their support for the African National Congress, but they also listed some challenges and their own expectations.
Who are giving the opposition parties this message. We are the voters of this country. We have the numbers, we have the courage, we have the commitment. All what we needed to hear from the ANC's 54th conference, what you will be talking about here, President, is that the ANC is ready to deliver on these commitments. We shall give you the 66% you need to change the laws that are the stumbling block on the various issues. When you said, President, the mandate you have from the 54th National Conference of the ANC, things will change, we believe you. We believe you because with the collective with whom you have been elected, we are seeing men and women that are capable. But these men and women must remember one thing. As the workers in this country want a united African National Congress.
We are committed to strengthening this alliance. But strengthening the alliance must not just be in words. It must be in deed and action. Firstly, we must accept Uguti ANC is facing many problems as we are gathered here today. Inkinga kumayiguli ANC sikhwehlela sonke thina ma-allies. So we have to ensure that we address the challenges facing the ANC so that we also face the challenges facing the alliance. Count in your branch how much time do you spend attacking another ANC comrades. Compare that to the time you spend doing door-to-door. If you spend more time attacking another ANC comrades, it means therefore we are getting out of the way. We are not getting along the lines where we should be.
We know that the stakes are high because we will be facing national and provincial election next year, which are going to be highly contested. And therefore, our resolve to work with our people should be high too. We must not take anything for granted.
And if you've just joined us, this is Weekend Prime with me, Cindy Mabe. In studio, we're joined by Kim Heller, political analyst, Dr. Charles Sinkala, international political expert and World Native Identity Foundation president, and Lucky Tegisho, Transform RSA deputy president. Just to continue on what the expectations are of the ANC, especially with its alliance partners, last year was particularly difficult with the SACP at any provocation, would want to call for Zuma first, the Guptas, Zupta, and all sorts of things, that if Zuma is still president of the country until 2019, is this something that will be the deal breaker for the alliance restoring its relations?
Yeah, I think my sense is that they have cooled off a bit in the sense that the person that they were punted in President Ramaphosa at least is leading the ANC. That's one part. But I also think that they still feel that it is necessary that the president of the country, President Zuma, must be recalled. I think they still have that feeling. But the challenge that I have with that is that firstly, President Zuma does have massive support within the ANC itself, firstly. But secondly, you see, it's really not correct for another structure of the alliance to come and instruct and put some condition to the ANC and say, if you are not doing the following, therefore we might be able to reconsider our alliance. I think that is wrong. Let them leave the ANC to deal with these challenges. And I can tell you that the ANC is capable to do that. And the challenges may not necessarily mean that the president of the country may be recalled. It then takes us back to the issue of the two centers of power. When you talk about that, I do know that there's only one center of power, and that's the ANC. There is no such as two centers of power. And when the ANC is the ruling party, it deploys its members to government. And it can be able to hold them accountable, call them and say, this is what I have meetings with them. So you can't say if there is a president, there is a power there. There is no power. The power is with the ANC because they can be able to call this person and say, look, this is what we want you to do. Only if that person does not perform, then there's something else.
So technically, Cyril Ramaphosa is Jacob Zuma's boss, both within the party and in government, by virtue of the fact that he's now merely a deployee and just an ordinary member of the ANC, Kim. So there is the probability that he could be recalled.
Well, the process of recall, I think, has been set out, and that lies eventually in the ambit of the National Assembly. But I think this whole narrative around the recall is such a tactic and propaganda of distraction. And I agree, let us let the ANC and its leadership get on with the task of implementation. You know, as for the alliance partners, I would love to see a stronger bond and harmony between the alliance partners. But I think it's incumbent on the alliance partners to behave a little bit more responsibly than it did last year, because effectively they behaved more like an opposition force than an alliance partner, and that needs to change. And perhaps the SACP needs to take some guidance from one of their forefathers to understand what being a communist party in a South Africa is all about, because I think they seem to have lost that. And rather than focusing on a recall of a president, which is hardly going to bring the end of poverty and inequality and landlessness, perhaps they must follow, they must work closely with the ANC on policy regeneration. So, for instance, the NDP may be a policy that needs to be revolutionized and upgraded to purpose to suit the current contemporary environment. So I would like to see the SACP rather and COSATU work on those things.
And how would the new leadership now deal with those dynamics where the alliance partner, well, at least with Blade Nzimande, saying that action or unity needs to be indeed? In other words, almost suggesting that in their consultative processes or engagement, that there needs to be consensus with the alliance, otherwise there's a possibility of further damaging relations. So the ANC needs to lead in this regard, and the alliance partners almost, they need to know their place, for lack of a better phrase. Dr. Sinkala?
I agree with my colleagues here, what they're talking about the alliance, and what we must understand is that the alliance needs more of ANC than the other way around. And what we need to understand is the previous regime or the control, the management of Jacob Zuma as president of the ANC, there was a point where he never consulted them. I'll give an example on the number of things or decision cabinet reshuffles where the alliance partners were not consulted. If we talk about COSATU, they lead a movement of employees into governments and all private sectors. They've got a leading people whom they have to represent to the ANC for them to work together. And they feel sometimes they are not consulted and they are not part of it, but they've got no option, they can't go anywhere. You're never going to see, maybe I'm too young to stay and see where the COSATU, they'll be affiliated maybe to DA or any other small political parties. But the ANC is still the strongest political party in South Africa. But also they must be very careful that being the strongest, they might win the elections, but they might not be in control of the whole government, both provincial government and the national government, as what we have evidently seen of mayors being appointed from other political parties. The recalling of Jacob Zuma, it's to be a grave mistake for ANC. That has happened before. And like my colleague said, Jacob Zuma has got a massive support within the ANC. And they have to sacrifice to see him go leave office in 2019 for them to make a transition. And I think Cyril is trying to manage of that very well and diplomatically.
Yeah, but there's still the double speak. I mean, even COSATU's stance is that they want for Zuma to be recalled. On the one side, its president, Jomo Dlamini, could not articulate that in so many words, saying that he stands with COSATU, but they committed and united with the ANC to ensure a two-thirds majority.
Yeah, but this is the thing which is happening. Cyril carry power now or mandate to sit down with these alliance partners and say, look, the problems has been created already. We need not to be part of the problem. We need to move out from the problem and go forward. And he has to convince them that we've got no option, because if they have to take that chance of taking him out, then they will divide the interest of the...
So does it rest now with a battle of ideas, the ability to influence and persuade the alliance partners in the interest of unity? Kim?
Yes, I think he must do that. And I almost feel, as I'm listening to the conversation and some of the dialogue that has occurred post-December, is that we've seen from Dr. Dlamini Zuma's camp a great sense of unity. They have been very gracious and very forthright in expressing unity and support for the new leadership. And I think we saw some very heartfelt graphics today of the doctor embracing the new leadership. But perhaps we're a little bit less judgmental about what we would have called the Ramaphosa camp, who seem to be emboldened now with revenge in some quarters. And I think Ramaphosa, who I think did a very good articulation of unity today, needs to have bold discussions with those people, because a call for the President Zuma to go, to me, is part of a call of disruption and disunity. So let us not apply the concept of unity in part and unfairly.
The renewal Cyril spoke about, like it was that it's not just for the party, it's also for the country. They need to have the public confidence that they are serious about eradication of corruption, both in the public and private sector. And for as long as President Jacob Zuma is there, as he has been labeled or been made the personification of corruption, do you think that that is something else that the party would need to consider in whether they gain public confidence or not?
Yeah, I think what the NEC is going to do, in my view, is that they are going to engage, comprehensively on the status of the president currently, as it is currently, with all these things that are happening around him. But also considering the issue that indeed he does have support. But like the president of the ANC said, to say what needs to prevail above everything else should be that unity sacrosanct. I think from his own words that whatever you have to do, remember there were two factions, and they were fighting this faction very serious. And one faction was saying, no, we must recall. Now, if you are going to recall, it means you are going to support one faction between the two factions, over and above the issue of considering the fact that indeed perhaps we have to look deeper into it. But there's nothing wrong with the president of the country to continue, because the president of the country will still report to the president of the ANC and the NEC. It will still have to do that, because that he's a deployee of the ANC. So why do you have to then say, no, but we want another person there? Because we need to speed up this thing of Cyril leading, while you know that to do that might affect your unity in purpose.
But I mean, there's still the gaping wounds, as Dr. Sinkala was saying, about the reshuffle or maybe inadequate consultation, that whether the SACP and the alliance partners would be satisfied with the explanation from, because he'd have to explain the rationale behind it. I don't think Dr. Bladen Zimande has necessarily made peace with the fact that he had to be a casualty of that reshuffle, and many others.
Well, it's quite interesting, and I think last year, if I spoke about the political inertia, which was the signature tune of the ANC ahead of the electoral conference, perhaps part of that tune was also the politics of the personal. And once again, I refer back to Dr. Dlamini Zuma as an exemplary expression of the fact that she has put the party above her person. And I think we need to see that. I mean, it's quite interesting that since we have changed the Minister of Higher Education, we have free education. So perhaps that, let me not say anything further on that point, but just to accept that politics of the people, and actually beyond the ANC, need to come first in this period more so than ever before.
But what is critical is that, you see, the ANC cannot be able to say when it took a decision, it must be able to consider what South Africa, yes, they can engage them, but it should just be consultation, because what is critical is for the ANC to resolve its matters, you know, not to be influenced by some alliance. They must be able to sit down and engage and say, this is what we are going to do, and engage the alliance on the basis of the decision that they took. So they are the ones that can say whether they recall or not because the party wants to recall, therefore they will recall. So the ANC ultimately is the one that takes this decision.
Just to add on that one, we have seen it before, what Zwelitin Bavi, the former Secretary General of COSATU, did. You know, he prematurely started fighting from there. He wanted to be recognized. And I feel very happy and the maturity of the president of COSATU, how he handled everything there, and is still there. Otherwise, COSATU should have been a big problem. You know, so they have to compromise. So, at one or the other, they must compromise. At the end of the day, it's the interest of the people and the interest of the unit of the ANC as an organization.
Yeah, and I mean, the new sheriff in town seems to have an approach that bad behavior ought to be corrected, in the sense that he says he will not tolerate, in so many words, the double speak. The members of the ANC ought to speak in one voice. And if you deviate from that particular stance of unity or what the policies are, you would be reined in. Would this apply to the alliance partners, or maybe be perceived as a means of stifling democratic engagements, or even trying to muzzle them, or even intimidate the alliance partners if they were to now make these kind of noises as they did with President Jacob Zuma?
I think what is going to happen is that if the ANC NEC has taken a decision around this matter, the best thing to do is to engage them. As Doc correctly stated, you have to engage them. But also, engaging them does not mean that you do not have a position of your organization. So, meaning that if they are not going to take what the ANC tells them in relation to the engagement that they had, the ANC have to move with that, because the ANC is an independent organization. From, yes, the alliance is there, but the ANC must be able to take it, just like the party also took their own decisions on a number of issues without consulting with the ANC. So the ANC will take a decision on the basis of the ANC issues and consult them and say, look, as an alliance, this is what we will do. Now, if they don't agree, then hard luck for them.
Yeah. What about SACP saying that at some point they were willing to go it alone for the 2019 elections? We've seen, I think it's 1 or 2 municipalities in the Free State where they are governing, if you like. But is that still a possibility that there could be a split from the alliance as days progress?
I don't envisage that happening now, that they've got their chosen candidate. And I think that is one of the advantages of Ramaphosa coming into this position, that he is probably able to cement a unity across alliance partners possibly better than anyone. But he must do so in a sustainable, radical manner rather than an opportunistic one. And I think, like he actually said, probably the most salient thing in the conversation, where he spoke about the ANC pursuing its own agenda. And I think it's something that the ANC hasn't really been that good at, because I think it's been distracted by what I would call the whistle calls of white praise singers. It's been distracted by the dictates of its alliance partners. So this has to be a consultative affair. But clearly the ANC has to be in charge, and it must assert itself now more than ever. And that is, I think, the challenge of Ramaphosa, to see where, which crowd has he got behind him. Is it the business crowd, or is it first and foremost the black child in this country? And that is where it has to be. And that decision is going to be something that will empower him or haunt him over the next 18 months.
But he's managed to rein in, at least at face value, even those that may have been alienated or marginalized. You spoke about the veterans, traditional leaders, NGOs, government non-government organizations, that this is a collective in trying to renew and restore not only the party but the country. That in itself, I mean, Kim, I understand about the land issue not being expressed in your preferred format, but you know, at least it seems that this is a precedent or a leadership that is trying to unite the country.
You see, Cyril's job now, I can describe it as an easy one, because there's been so much mistakes from his predecessor, where he's coming from. And he will just capitalize on those and turn them into advantage. Like what we've said, consult with the alliance partners, the stakeholders, and he's been too much describing and talking about the grassroots people, the branches, that he must give back the power to the people. Those are the people who've been marginalized and they've been left out. All this time they've been talking and their versions hasn't been heard or implemented. There's still problems in municipalities. There's still problem as far back as 1994. So things has never changed. So his task now is to, apart from uniting the ANC, he has to reunite the country and rekindle the policies of the ANC so that the ANC can, you know, can work towards that. And the other thing which he has to do is the corruption which has been maneuvering around into the ANC. So he has to show leadership of condemning and arresting, putting those people to court to be answerable for the charges. I mean, it's unfortunate that in Jacob Zuma's regime there hasn't been anybody of not maybe whom I'm aware of being subjected to court or answer, or maybe it's just Manana was subjected to because of an abuse.
Yeah, so very briefly, your reaction to that, whether it is the end of an era, as some would call it, and that Jacob Zuma was a liability or is a liability to the ANC. How do you see his tenure in the ANC compared to where we are now?
Gosh, I don't see that at all. I think that he set the foundations for radical economic transformation, and I think the task of the new president, whoever that may be, probably Cyril Ramaphosa, is to build on those foundations in a way that does not compromise the black child in this country, as has been done since colonialism.
I don't see that as well. And I think there are processes and procedures in place to deal with corruption, as correctly stated by Tom. What worries me, though, is to say, when he spoke about the commission of inquiry, he also said that is in line with the findings of the former public protector. And that is almost in contrast to a number of views, including the view of the previous Secretary General, Comrade Gwede, who said, no, when we have to do this thing, we have to broaden it so that it must. So there is already some challenges that I think they have to sit down and talk, because also the public protector, the current one, is clear to say it must be broadened. But he says that is in line with the findings of the public protector. So we need to clarify that. We don't know, is it? But I think they need to talk about it.
Yeah, of course, we're very keenly waiting the terms of reference for that particular inquiry. But thanks indeed for spending the Sunday evening with me. Much appreciated. And we had Kim Heller, political analyst in studio, Dr. Charles Sinkala, international political expert and World Native Identity Foundation president, Lucky Tekisho, Transform RSA deputy president. Siyabonga kakhulu. And you at home, I will take a quick break. Do stay with ANN7 Weekend Prime. We'll be back after this.